So step 3 in understanding adrenal fatigue is to become aware that cortisol and all of your hormones are actually derived from cholesterol. So eat cholesterol. The idea of a low cholesterol diet is crazy because you cannot actually produce enough you cannot produce enough cholesterol in a day to meet your body's needs for cholesterol. So the idea of a low cholesterol diet just doesn't actually make sense. So cholesterol turns into pregnenolone. Pregnenolone then turns into progesterone and DHEA, which are kind of like two distinct systems in the body. The progesterone turns into cortisol, and again, that's sort of our thing to learn about today is cortisol. DHEA can turn into testosterone, the three estrogens, which are estrione, estriol, and estrione. And they all have different functions as well. Now, this is going to be kind of like an irrigation metaphor. So if we have the plumbing coming in, enough, if it's water from the cholesterol that we produce every day in our body, then we're going to have enough to make the pregnenolone and everything else that cholesterol does in your body. Now, this is also about habit. So if your body's under a lot of stress fairly commonly, you could say in the plumbing metaphor, progesterone goes from, say, being the size of a kitchen sink to the size of being a bathtub, in the sense that every day your body predictably thinks you're going to need that much progesterone to make that much cortisol. So if your cortisol starts getting that much more abundant support, because your body is very adaptable and it wants to support what you're doing, it thinks you're sure that what you're doing makes sense, it will make the progesterone pathways stimulate themselves enough so that, again, the metaphor, the image would be progesterone goes from being a reservoir like a sink to a reservoir like a tub. And that allows cortisol to do the same thing. So now your body's ability to produce cortisol goes up regularly, day by day by day. And now your cortisol goes from being able to be a sink to a bathtub. When that happens, your body's like, oh my God, I mean, this is new. This doesn't really happen very often at all. So it starts borrowing from this side of your body's hormonal pathways because there's only so much cholesterol to go around. Make sense? And again, you keep doing this, your cortisol is going to go from the sink to the bathtub to a hot tub. And then the progesterone is going to try and do the same thing. And eventually you have this whole tilting across the hormonal pathways in your body. Because again, your body is trying to support your decisions to, stay in a fight or flight state longer than ever before. Which is obviously catastrophically bad for your hormonal health, especially around things like fertility. Also mood, depression, anxiety, because believe it or not, if your hormones are out of whack, it's going to change how your neurotransmitters actually work in your brain, which I'll do a whole video on that by itself. But as you get the vision, hopefully you're getting the mental imagery, that all the cholesterol and molecules that are supposed to go over here are going over here. And this is often referred to as a pregnenolone steal, which is a catchy way of saying something, but I think it's probably wiser to be more clinically accurate and say that you've become hormonally catabolic or tissue catabolic. And catabolic means your body's actually eating itself up in one way to try and keep another process going. And I apologize for the imagery, but if you can imagine a person with a severe infection, perhaps cancer in the hospital, they're just going to waste away. They could have started 160 pounds, and by the time they get to the end of the disease, they're probably around 95, maybe 90 pounds, because your body's going to be catabolic enough to use all of the protein in your muscles to support your immune system at fighting the infection or fighting cancer. So here we go, step 3. In order to be seriously in the process we call adrenal fatigue, you would have to also be hormonally catabolic enough to support this whole process over time. So now let's look at step 4, which asks the question, is it actually mostly in your head when it comes to adrenal fatigue? So now you're familiar with step 1, step 2, step 3 of understanding adrenal fatigue in the sense of if it's real and how it works. So there's another step that I think is really important to look at. So between your hypothalamus and pituitary gland, and we're going to focus in on the brain for this step, is something we call the PVN, which, if I say it right, is periventricular nucleus. So what PVN is basically like an enlarged version of a synapse in terms of a neuron and a space in a neuron and the communication between the two. Now, if we think of the HPA axis as the gas pedal forcing the adrenal metabolism to keep running at a stronger rate than normal, you could just say that this is the gas pedal. And at a certain point, anything in your physiology is going to start to wear out or frazzle a little bit or fray around the edges because it's meant to have times of rest, and variations in its adaptability and its use. So if you leave the gas pedal on too long, too often, for too many weeks, months, and years, it's quite likely that all the enzymes and nutrients and cofactors and things that run this system could actually start to go downwards. And there's a lot of evidence that that's true. So a certain aspect of adrenal fatigue inevitably will become in your brain. Now for some people, because of inflammation in the structure of the brain, trauma to the brain, even trauma in life from like PTSD and things like that, the PVN is stuck on, gas pedal to the floor, primarily from the brain down, in the sense that it's not really an adrenal problem when it comes to the medical choices you're going to need to take to resolve the problem. So that's an important thing. And then there's the long-term health of your brain itself. If you're not doing the things that your brain needs to support its well-being, then this structure and many other structures in your brain are going to have less resilient function. And one of the things that's really important in this sense here, it's called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So brain-derived from your brain, neurotropic, making neurons, neurotransmitters grow, and factor. So if you don't have enough of this in your brain regularly, you can't really rebuild things, So you have a bit of stress, you overuse the gas pedal, the PVN, and your brain doesn't have the ability, the resiliency to repair itself, then whatever damage you've done in the short term may last a lot longer than it has in the past. And I think any of us as we age start to recognize that that's happening. In my 30s I used to, in my 40s I used to, now I can't, and that kind of thing. So there's two really cool ways to engage the BDNF process in your brain to make it more resilient and abundant. One is called intermittent fasting, which I'll do some videos on, but basically that just means either fasting 1 day a week or only eating during a small window during the day where you're getting enough calories for the day, you're just getting them within about a 4 or 5 hour period. Another way to increase the BDNF is certain kinds of high-intensity exercise, like doing sprints until you're gasping or burpees until you're gasping. Or a really interesting opportunity is something I call Primal Swimming, where you swim out into a pool or a lake or wherever you like to go swimming with a rock, and then you drop the rock, and then you swim down to the bottom, pick up the rock, and then bring it up to the top and then drop it again. And the period of time that you're underwater creating exertion and using your muscles vigorously, but you're not breathing, even speeds up the production of what makes BDNF happen. So that gets pretty complex, but I just wanted you to be really, really aware that no one has the statistics about how much percentage adrenal fatigue is just adrenal glands, how much it's neurological in origin, but I think it's important to make sure that if you feel like you have this, somebody you know has this, that you're having the clinician assess all of those things so that you're not spending months, weeks, maybe even years trying to improve adrenal health by just focusing on the gland. Because usually almost everyone has to focus on both the adrenal gland system and, of course, your brain. And, of course, diet and lifestyle and sleep and exercise and everything else, too. So, hope you enjoyed this video. It's probably a little bit longer than most videos that I make, but there's a lot to know and a lot to understand, and it's a really, really common thing for people to face, especially in midlife. So, again, I'm Michael Smith, practicing integrative medicine for 20 years. Please like and share the video. Please leave comments so I know what's working for people watching and what's not. More importantly, ask questions, type them in the comment box below so that I can answer them for you. And please subscribe to the channel so that I get a sense that this is actually working for people. So have a great day and take good care of yourself.